and he's probably spent more time thinking about it. For the rest of us, it's more a question of, okay, we have to shift the way we support, and that's what we need to do.
And what does that shift look like for you?
Well, that's we don't know yet. I mean, there was an order to the years because my mother didn't change very much.
They thought nobody would find out, but the secret is out. Princess Anne has just done something absolutely shocking. She deliberately blocked Queen Camilla from Prince William's coronation planning, and the reason why has left the entire royal family shaken to its core.
You read to your grandchildren.
Yeah.
And I think I read every children's book. I mean, I could practically do them backwards. Harry McClary from Donaldson's Dairy. I mean,
Palace insiders are speaking out, and what they are revealing is almost impossible to believe. This is the moment the British monarchy changed forever. King Charles is reportedly devastated. Camilla is furious. And William? He knew exactly what was happening. The British monarchy has always been built on a careful balance of public appearances and private decisions. What the world sees at ceremonial events, state visits, and official engagements is often very different from what happens behind closed doors inside the various royal residences. That gap between the public face of the crown and the reality of life within it has always existed, and it has always mattered. But every so often, something shifts in a way that makes that gap impossible to ignore. According to multiple royal insiders and sources close to the palace, something significant has recently shifted. Reports have emerged suggesting that Princess Anne, the Princess Royal and only daughter of the late Queen Elizabeth II, took deliberate steps to keep Queen Camilla away from early planning meetings related to Prince William's future coronation. The claim is striking on its own, but what makes it particularly notable is the way it apparently happened. There were no public arguments, no formal objections filed through official channels, and no statements issued to the press. Instead, the move was quiet, structured, and methodical. Names were simply left off invitation lists. Memos did not arrive at the right offices. Meetings were scheduled and held without certain people being informed. And by the time the pattern became clear, the decisions had already been made. For those who follow the inner workings of the British royal family closely, this kind of silent maneuvering is not entirely surprising. The monarchy has always operated with a strong preference for discretion. Disputes, rivalries, and disagreements rarely surface in ways that are visible to the general public. And when they do, they are almost always framed in careful, diplomatic language designed to smooth things over. What makes the situation between Princess Anne and Queen Camilla different, according to sources familiar with the matter, is the scale of what is at stake. This is not a disagreement over the seating arrangements at a dinner or a difference of opinion about the order of a public engagement. This concerns the planning of a future coronation, one of the most significant ceremonies in the life of the monarchy, and the question of who gets to have a voice in shaping it. Prince William is the heir to the throne. He will in time become king. His coronation will be a defining national moment, watched by millions of people across the United Kingdom and around the world. The decisions made during the planning process will shape not just the ceremony itself, but the image of the monarchy for a generation. Who sits at the table during those early planning conversations and who does not is therefore a question of real consequence. It speaks to influence, to trust, and to the future direction of the crown. Princess Anne has, throughout her decades of royal service, built a reputation as one of the most hard-working and dependable members of the royal family. She is known for taking her responsibilities seriously, for showing up consistently, and for placing the institution above personal comfort or public profile. She has carried out thousands of official engagements over the course of her career and has rarely attracted the kind of controversy or press attention that has surrounded other members of the family. In many respects, she represents a certain vision of what royal service looks like, one rooted in tradition, discipline, and a deep commitment to continuity. Queen Camilla came to her current position by a very different path. Her relationship with King Charles III was, for many years, a source of significant public controversy. The breakdown of the king's first marriage and the role that Camilla played in the events that followed made her a deeply unpopular figure in the eyes of a large section of the British public for an extended period of time. Over the years, she worked to rebuild her image, gradually taking on more public duties, demonstrating reliability and a degree of warmth that helped shift public opinion in her favour. by the time Charles ascended to the throne following the death of Queen Elizabeth II in September 2022. Camilla's position as Queen Consort was formally recognised and publicly accepted in a way that would have seemed difficult to imagine a decade earlier. But acceptance in the public eye and acceptance within the inner circles of the royal family are not always the same thing. And it is within those inner circles that the current tension appears to have taken root. According to palace sources, the coronation planning process for Prince William began with a series of meetings involving senior members of the royal family and trusted advisors. These were not public events. They were private working sessions focused on the practical and ceremonial dimensions of what will eventually be a major constitutional moment. Invitations were extended to those considered part of the core planning group. When the lists were examined, Queen Camilla was not among those invited. Sources indicate that Camilla's office at Clarence House began to notice the absence of certain communications that would normally have been expected. Key memos did not arrive. Requests for updates went unanswered or were met with responses that revealed very little. It was only when staff within her office began making internal inquiries that the picture became clearer. According to one source familiar with the situation, confirmation came that the instructions guiding who was and was not included in the planning process had originated from within Princess Anne's circle. Camilla reportedly found out about the meetings not through a direct conversation or an official notification, but through the questions her own staff were asking and the answers they were receiving. By several accounts, she was surprised and hurt by the discovery. She had expected to be involved. She had expected, as queen, to have a place at the table during the planning of her stepson's coronation. Instead, she found herself on the outside of a process that was moving forward without her. What is important to understand is that none of this played out in public. There were no scenes, no public statements, and no visible sign of any difficulty. At official appearances, the members of the royal family continued to present the image of unity and cooperation that the institution has always prioritized. The tension, if that is the right word for it, remained entirely within the walls of the palace. But inside those walls, according to people with knowledge of the situation, the atmosphere had changed. Something had moved. And the question of who holds influence over the future of the crown had become, quietly but unmistakably, a live issue. Whether this represents a deliberate strategy by Princess Anne to protect Prince William's authority over his own reign, a reflection of long-standing tensions within the family, or something else entirely remains a matter of interpretation. But the facts, as reported by those close to the palace, point to a moment of real significance. In an institution where tradition is everything, and where the management of power happens almost entirely out of sight, a shift of this kind is not a small thing. The rules inside the palace, it seems, are being written again, and the people writing them are not necessarily the ones who held the pen before. To understand why Princess Anne's actions carry the weight they do, it helps to understand the woman herself. She is not someone who moves impulsively or speaks without intention. Everything about her public life, and by most accounts her private one too, suggests a person who thinks carefully before acting and who holds herself to a standard that she expects others to meet as well. That reputation did not appear overnight. It was built over many decades of consistent service, and it shapes the way people inside the palace interpret everything she does. Princess Anne was born on the 15th of August, 1950 at Clarence House in London. She was the second child of Princess Elizabeth and Prince Philip, and the only daughter. From early in her life, those around her noted a seriousness and self-possession that set her apart. She was not drawn to the spotlight in the way that public life inevitably creates. She was more interested in getting things done. Her upbringing, shaped by parents who believed deeply in the responsibilities that came with their position, gave her a clear and consistent framework for understanding what royal life was supposed to mean. It was about duty. It was about service. It was about placing the institution above the individual, consistently and without complaint. As she grew older, that framework became the foundation of everything she did. She pursued competitive equestrian sport at the highest level, representing Great Britain at the 1976 Olympic Games in Montreal. She threw herself into charitable work, becoming involved with Save the Children in a way that went well beyond the ceremonial. She visited communities in some of the most difficult parts of the world and did so without fanfare or extensive media coverage. People who worked alongside her in those settings often described her as focused, no nonsense, and genuinely engaged. She was not there for the photographs. She was there because she believed it mattered. Over the course of her royal career, she has carried out a staggering number of official engagements, consistently ranking among the busiest working members of the family year after year. She does not make a great deal of noise about this. She does not seek recognition for it in any obvious way. But those who pay attention to the details of royal life have always known that when it comes to sheer volume of work and reliability of presence, Anne occupies a category of her own. That quiet consistency has earned her a form of respect inside the palace that is different in character from the kind generated by popularity or public affection. It is the respect that comes from people knowing, over a long period of time, that you will always show up and that you will always do what is required. This is the context in which her relationship with Queen Camilla needs to be understood. The two women have, over the years, maintained what most observers would describe as a professionally courteous relationship. They have appeared together at public events without incident. There has been no visible hostility, no public exchange of sharp words, and no moments that would suggest open conflict. But beneath the surface of that professional courtesy, sources familiar with the palace's internal dynamics suggest that the two women have never been particularly close, and that their approaches to royal life reflect genuinely different values and priorities. For Anne, the monarchy is fundamentally about earned authority. It is about years of steady, unglamorous work that builds something real and lasting. It's about understanding that the crown does not belong to any individual, but to an idea that must be protected and maintained across generations. She has little patience, by most accounts, for the idea that visibility or image management should be treated as ends in themselves. She is deeply skeptical of anything that looks like performance without substance behind it. Camilla's journey to her current position followed a path that was shaped, inevitably, by very different pressures and circumstances. Her relationship with King Charles unfolded over decades in the full glare of public scrutiny, and the controversy that surrounded it required a sustained effort to manage perceptions and rebuild public trust. That process involved a careful, gradual increase in public duties, a willingness to take on responsibilities that demonstrated reliability and usefulness, and a long-term strategy of making herself an accepted and valued part of the royal picture. It worked, to a significant degree. By the time she became Queen Consort, the most intense opposition to her presence had faded, and she had established herself as a figure who could fulfill the ceremonial and public dimensions of her role with confidence and competence. But the skills required to rebuild a public image and the qualities that Anne values most in a member of the royal family are not necessarily the same thing. And inside the palace, where performance in front of cameras matters far less than it might elsewhere, the distinction between the two can feel significant. Sources close to the palace suggest that as King Charles settled into his reign, Camilla's confidence and her involvement in discussions about ceremony, public engagement, and the presentation of the monarchy visibly grew. She became more vocal in certain settings. She expressed views about how the royal family should present itself and about how specific occasions should be handled. In some quarters, this was seen as a natural and appropriate reflection of her status as queen. In others, it was viewed with more caution. It was reportedly in this atmosphere that Anne made a private remark to a confidant that has since circulated among people with knowledge of the palace's inner workings. The comment, as it has been relayed, drew a distinction between those who carry the responsibilities of the crown out of genuine commitment and those who are drawn more to what the crown represents in terms of status and visibility. She did not attach a name to the observation. She did not need to. Those who heard it understood the reference clearly enough. What this reflects at its core is a disagreement about what the monarchy is for. Anne's view, shaped by a lifetime of service and a deep understanding of what it takes to sustain an institution across generations, is that the crown is held together by hard work, by discipline, and by a clear sense of hierarchy and responsibility. Influence within the royal family, in her view, must be earned through demonstrated commitment over time. It cannot simply be assumed on the basis of proximity to power or the fact of holding a particular title. That view did not go untested as Prince William began the process of preparing for his future role. The question of who should be involved in the planning of his coronation was not an abstract one. It was a question about who holds authority over the future of the monarchy and about whether that authority would be allowed to flow naturally to the next generation, or whether it would be pulled in directions that William himself had not invited. For Anne, the answer was clear. The planning belonged to William. The decisions were his to make, and her role, as she understood it, was to make sure that the process reflected that reality, whatever it took to ensure it. There comes a point in the life of any future monarch when the theoretical becomes practical. For years, Prince William has lived with the knowledge that the crown will one day pass to him. He has watched, studied, and prepared. He has navigated the tensions that come with being the heir to one of the most scrutinized institutions in the world. He has balanced his own instincts and values against the weight of tradition and the expectations of an institution that does not change easily or quickly. But as the planning for his future coronation began to take shape, something shifted. The future stopped being abstract. The decisions being made were real, and the question of who would have a say in them was one that William was no longer prepared to leave unanswered. Those who know William well describe a man who is thoughtful and measured in the way he approaches difficult situations. He does not rush. He does not react publicly to things that he believes are better handled privately. He learned early in his life, through circumstances that were far more painful than most people will ever have to face, that the space between what is felt and what is said in public is one that needs to be managed with great care. That discipline has shaped him. But discipline is not the same as passivity, and the people closest to him have always known that behind the careful public exterior there is someone with firm convictions and a clear sense of where his boundaries lie. According to sources familiar with the events that took place during the early stages of coronation, planning William requested a private meeting with Queen Camilla at Clarence House. The decision to have that conversation directly, rather than allowing the situation to develop through intermediaries or to be managed at a distance, says a great deal about how seriously he was taking the matter. This was not a casual exchange. He went into it with a clear purpose and a clear message, and he delivered that message in terms that left very little room for interpretation. He did not approach the conversation as a stepson speaking to a stepmother. He was explicit about that distinction, according to those with knowledge of what was discussed. He spoke as the future king. He explained that the planning for his coronation had begun and that he intended to exercise full authority over every aspect of it. He was not dismissive of the experience that Camilla had accumulated during her years beside King Charles. He acknowledged it, but he was direct about the fact that acknowledgement was not the same as an invitation to participate in decisions that he considered his own to make. His coronation would reflect his values, his vision, and the direction he intended to take the monarchy. That was not a matter he was open to negotiating. Camilla, by all accounts, listened to what he said with composure. She is not someone who loses her footing easily in difficult conversations. Years of navigating complex personal and public circumstances have given her a degree of steadiness that those around her tend to remark on. Her response, according to sources, was measured. She drew on her experience, on the years she had spent at the centre of royal life, and suggested that the ceremonial dimensions of a coronation were, in some respects, a matter of established tradition rather than personal expression. The implication was that her involvement would not represent an intrusion, but a contribution from someone who understood the terrain. William did not accept that framing. For him, the coronation was not simply a matter of following an established template. It was an opportunity to set the tone for his reign and to make clear, from the very beginning, where authority within the monarchy resided. He told her firmly that the crown was his responsibility to shape. The conversation ended without the kind of confrontation that produces lasting public damage, but it ended without any ambiguity about where William stood. He made his position clear, and then he left. The following day, he met with Princess Anne. The two of them have, over the years, developed a relationship built on mutual respect and a shared understanding of what the monarchy requires of the people who serve it. Anne has been a consistent presence in William's life, someone whose commitment to the institution and whose clarity of purpose he has always valued. In that meeting, he shared his concerns about the question of influence and about the importance of maintaining clear boundaries around the planning process. Anne, according to those familiar with the conversation, agreed with him entirely. The decision was made between them that Camilla would not be included in further coronation planning meetings. What happened next illustrated in a very practical way how power operates within the royal family when it is exercised quietly and without fanfare. There was no announcement. There was no formal communication sent to Camilla's office explaining the decision that had been taken. The change made itself known through absence. Memos that would previously have been routed to Clarence House did not arrive. Meeting notifications were not issued. The machinery of planning continued to move forward, but it moved forward along a track that did not pass through Camilla's door. She discovered what had happened not through a direct conversation, but through the confusion of her own staff. People within her office were asking questions and not receiving answers that made sense. Eventually, the picture became clear enough. The instructions that were shaping the planning process, the decisions about who was included and who was not, were coming from within Princess Anne's circle. Camilla had been deliberately excluded, and the exclusion had not been communicated to her. She had been left to find out for herself. By all accounts, her reaction combined genuine hurt with a determination to understand the full extent of what had taken place. She approached King Charles privately. She brought the matter to him directly, as his wife and as queen, and she expected him to respond in a way that reflected both those things. Charles found himself in an extraordinarily difficult position. On one side was his wife, someone he had fought for over many decades and whose place in the royal family he had worked hard to establish and protect. On the other was his son, the future king, who had made a clear and deliberate decision about the boundaries of his own authority. Whatever Charles felt privately about the situation, whatever the tensions it created for him, he did not reverse William's decision. He did not intervene. He did not instruct Anne or William to reconsider. His silence in a situation where silence represented a form of answer was deeply significant. The weight of that silence should not be underestimated. Charles stepping back from a situation in which his wife had been hurt, in which she had come to him expecting support, and choosing not to act was a statement in itself. It suggested that he understood, and perhaps even accepted, that the centre of gravity within the monarchy was shifting. The decisions being made around his son's coronation were no longer his to control. The future was asserting itself, and the present was not standing in its way. For Camilla, the implications went beyond the immediate question of missing meetings. Being excluded from the planning of a future coronation was not a minor administrative matter. It was a signal about where she stood in relation to the next chapter of the monarchy's story. She had invested years in building her position. She had endured public hostility, navigated immense personal and institutional pressure, and arrived at a place where her role seemed secure. What happened during the coronation planning process suggested that security was less absolute than she had believed. The future was being shaped in rooms she was not invited into, and the people making the decisions had concluded, clearly and deliberately, that her presence was not required. The line that William drew was not drawn in anger. It was drawn with precision and with a clear understanding of what it meant. He was defining the terms of his own reign before that reign had even begun, establishing from the outset that authority over the crown's future belonged to him and to those he chose to trust with it. In doing so, he aligned himself with a version of the monarchy that Princess Anne had spent a lifetime embodying. One where seniority is earned, where influence follows from demonstrated commitment, and where the boundaries of power are clear and respected. Whether the rest of the royal family had fully anticipated that William would move so decisively and so early is another question entirely. The days that followed the decision about Queen Camilla's exclusion from coronation planning meetings did not produce any visible rupture in the public face of the royal family. Official engagements continued. Appearances were made. The carefully maintained image of a united and functioning institution remained intact for the cameras and for the watching public. But inside the palace, according to people with knowledge of the situation, the atmosphere had changed in ways that those working within it could feel clearly, even if they could not speak about them openly. Something had settled into a new position, and everyone who understood how the institution worked knew that it was unlikely to shift back. Princess Anne moved forward in her role within the coronation planning process with the kind of focused determination that has always characterized her approach to responsibilities she considers important. She did not make a show of what had happened. She did not seek credit for the outcome or position herself in any way that drew attention to the decisions that had been taken. That is not how she operates. Her involvement remained, as it had always been, practical and purposeful. She worked alongside William's team to ensure that the planning process stayed on track, that discussions remained focused on substance rather than ceremony for its own sake, and that the structure around the future king was tight enough to function effectively without becoming cluttered by competing voices or overlapping lines of authority. Staff who were part of the planning process reportedly followed the new direction without any significant resistance. The instructions were clear. The lines of communication were established and the work continued. In institutions built on hierarchy and protocol, clarity of authority tends to produce compliance, even when the specific shape of that authority may have changed recently. People adapt to where power sits, and in this case, where power sat had become considerably clearer than it might have been only a short time before. The palace, as it tends to do in situations of internal sensitivity, eventually released a statement. It was carefully worded, as palace statements almost always are. It spoke in general terms about cooperation among senior members of the royal family and expressed support for the Prince of Wales as he prepared for his future responsibilities. The language was measured and gave nothing specific away. Camilla's name did not appear in it. For those who follow royal affairs closely, that absence was itself a piece of information. In the language of official palace communications, what is left out is often as meaningful as what is included. The statement acknowledged a process without describing it, and it signaled a direction without identifying the people who had determined it. Royal commentators and those who study the inner workings of the monarchy noted the omission. Several pointed out that in previous communications related to major ceremonial planning, the Queen Consort or Queen's involvement would typically have been referenced in some form. The fact that it was not suggested that the current situation was being managed with unusual care, and that there were aspects of it that the palace was not prepared to address directly in any public forum. For an institution that has historically been very deliberate about the language it uses in official communications, even small departures from established patterns tend to carry weight. Inside Clarence's house, the reality of what had taken place continued to make itself felt. For Camilla, the exclusion from coronation planning meetings was not something she could simply absorb and move past without consequence. The impact was practical as well as personal. Being outside the room during the early stages of such a significant planning process meant being outside the conversations that would shape the decisions. It meant having no influence over the framing of key questions, no opportunity to offer perspective during the moments when perspective could actually affect outcomes, and no visibility into the direction that planning was taking until that direction had already been established. In an institution where early involvement in major processes translates directly into long-term influence, being excluded from the beginning is not a small thing. It is a statement about where someone's contribution is valued and where it is not. Camilla had worked for years to reach a position of genuine standing within the royal family. That journey had not been easy or straightforward. There had been periods of intense public criticism, moments of real personal difficulty, and a long and patient process of rebuilding trust and credibility, both with the public and within the institution itself. She had taken on responsibilities that were not glamorous. She had shown up in circumstances that required resilience rather than visibility. And she had, by the time King Charles ascended to the throne, arrived at a place where her role as queen seemed settled and secure. What the coronation planning process revealed was that the security of that position had limits, and that those limits were being defined by people other than her. That realization, however composed she remained on the surface, was not a small one to sit with. At the same time, another figure was becoming increasingly visible in the spaces that surrounded the planning process. Catherine, Princess of Wales, had for some time been building her own presence within the working structures of the royal family, in ways that were noticed and valued by those closest to William. Her approach to her role has always been characterized by a kind of quiet effectiveness. She does not push herself into the foreground in ways that draw unnecessary attention. She works steadily, she prepares thoroughly, and she brings to her responsibilities a seriousness that people who work with her consistently remark on. During the early stages of coronation planning, Catherine participated in discussions and contributed ideas in ways that those involved found genuinely useful. She brought a perspective on how the ceremony could honour the weight of tradition, while also speaking to the concerns and sensibilities of a younger generation that will inherit the monarchy as an institution in the decades to come. That balance between respecting what has always been done and finding ways to make it relevant to people who did not grow up with the same instinctive connection to royal tradition is one of the central challenges facing the monarchy in the current period. The fact that Catherine was thinking about it clearly and contributing to conversations about how to address it did not go unnoticed. Advisors who were part of those early discussions were, by several accounts, impressed by the steadiness of her approach and the quality of her engagement. Where others brought history and experience to the table, Catherine brought something that the institution also needs if it is to remain meaningful in a changing world. She brought an understanding of the present. What this suggested, taken together with William's clear assertion of authority over the planning process and Anne's consistent backing of his position, was that the centre of gravity within the royal family was moving. Not dramatically, not with a great deal of visible upheaval, but unmistakably. The next generation was not waiting to be handed authority, it was exercising it, thoughtfully and deliberately, and the current generation was, in various ways, adjusting to that reality. King Charles will continue to do so for as long as he will continue to do so for as long as he is king. But authority and influence are not always the same thing, and the events surrounding the coronation planning process suggested that even at the level of the crown itself, the lines between them had become more complicated than they might once have been. Charles had chosen not to reverse the decision that William and Anne had made together. He had not intervened when Camilla came to him with her concerns. His response, or more precisely his absence of response, was a form of acknowledgement that the situation was one he was prepared to allow to stand. Whether that reflected a conscious and deliberate decision on his part to let his son exercise authority without interference, or whether it reflected the particular difficulty of the personal dynamics involved, is something that only those closest to him could say with any confidence. What is clear is that the outcome of his silence was to reinforce the shift that had already taken place. By not acting, he effectively confirmed that the decisions made around his son's coronation planning were legitimate and that the authority behind them was real. A king who chooses not to use his power in a given situation is still making a choice, and the choice Charles made here carried consequences that will likely be felt for some time. There is something significant in all of this that goes beyond the specific details of a planning dispute within the royal family. It speaks to a broader question about how institutions of this kind manage the transition between generations. The British monarchy has survived for centuries, in part because it has found ways to renew itself while maintaining enough continuity to remain recognisable. That process of renewal is never entirely smooth. It involves friction, it involves the renegotiation of relationships and the redefinition of where authority sits, and it almost always involves moments of private tension that the public never fully sees. What has happened in the period surrounding Prince William's coronation planning appears to be one of those moments. It is not a crisis, it is a transition. But transitions of this kind, however quietly they unfold, leave marks on the institutions they move through. Princess Anne acted in a way that was consistent with everything she has always believed about how the monarchy should work. She protected the future king's authority to define his own reign. She maintained the principle that influence within the institution must follow clear and established lines. And she did all of it without producing a public crisis or a visible breakdown in the relationships that the institution depends on. William, for his part, demonstrated something important about the kind of king he intends to be. He moved decisively when he believed the situation required it. He was clear about where his authority began and equally clear about where he expected others to stand in relation to it. He did not wait for permission to exercise the authority that his position as heir to the throne gives him. He simply exercised it, calmly, deliberately, and effectively. The royal family will continue to present a united front to the world, as it has always done. The formal structures of the institution will remain in place, and the ceremonies and engagements and public appearances will continue to project an image of stability and continuity. But the reality inside the palace, as it has always been, is more complex than the image suggests. Power has moved, relationships have been redefined, and the monarchy that Prince William will one day lead is already, in certain quiet but important ways, beginning to take shape around him.